Good morning, afternoon, evening. Today, I want to share a truth that is often overlooked yet profoundly transformative. The ability to show compassion to others begins with the love and care we extend to ourselves. In a world that constantly asks us to give, perform, and prove, it is easy to forget that the deepest source of empathy and understanding is rooted in self-love. Without it, our kindness toward others can become exhausted, conditional, or even resentful. When we learn to embrace ourselves fully, however, we unlock a wellspring of patience, generosity, and connection that transforms not only our lives, but the lives of those around us. Self-acceptance is the foundation of this journey. To accept ourselves is to recognize our inherent worth, our strengths, and our flaws without judgment or pretense. It is not about perfection. It is about embracing the totality of who we are, the victories, the mistakes, the struggles, and the growth that emerges from them. Self-acceptance begins with awareness, an honest and compassionate observation of our thoughts, emotions, and actions. It allows us to see ourselves clearly, without distortion or comparison, and to offer ourselves the same understanding we naturally give to others. By accepting ourselves as we are, we free our minds from self-criticism and open the door to authentic empathy. When we are whole within, we no longer project insecurities or fear onto others, and we are able to connect with genuine clarity and care. Inner dialogue shapes the reality we live in. The way we speak to ourselves influences how we interpret the world and how we respond to life's challenges. A harsh, critical inner voice creates doubt, fear, and resistance, while a supportive, nurturing dialogue fosters confidence, resilience, and openness. When we choose to speak to ourselves with kindness, encouragement, and patience, we lay the groundwork for compassion toward others. Every thought we entertain becomes a lens through which we experience life, and by cultivating a constructive internal conversation, we begin to perceive others not as adversaries, critics, or threats, but as fellow human beings navigating their own struggles. The way we treat ourselves inwardly ripples outward, shaping the reality we inhabit and the quality of our connections. Healing through compassion for self is essential in this journey. Each of us carries emotional wounds, regrets, or scars that shape our perceptions and interactions. By addressing these with kindness rather than judgment, we allow our pain to transform into wisdom and resilience. Self-compassion is the recognition that imperfection is human, that mistakes are opportunities for learning, and that we deserve care and patience in our own healing. When we nurture ourselves in this way, we develop the emotional bandwidth to empathize with others' struggles. Healing is not a linear process, but a compassionate relationship with ourselves allows us to navigate setbacks with grace, to embrace vulnerability, and to respond to the world with a steady and open heart. Boundaries are acts of self-love that protect our capacity to give and connect. Setting limits is not selfish, it is necessary to maintain balance, integrity, and well-being. By defining what we will and will not accept, we honor our own needs and create conditions for healthy, authentic relationships. Boundaries prevent emotional depletion, foster respect, and enable us to engage with others from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. They are declarations of self-worth that ripple outward, showing others that respect, care, and integrity are not only deserved but necessary for meaningful interaction. By practicing boundaries, we ensure that our love and compassion are sustainable, intentional, and impactful. Gratitude towards self amplifies this capacity for compassion. When we acknowledge and appreciate our efforts, our growth, and our resilience, we cultivate a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. Recognizing our own worth reinforces self-respect, strengthens confidence, and nurtures emotional balance. Gratitude allows us to celebrate not only our successes, but also the courage and effort that have carried us through challenges. This internal recognition deepens our empathy as we understand firsthand the value of encouragement, affirmation, and kindness. By appreciating ourselves, we model care and inspire others to honor their own journeys as well. The ripple effect of self-love is far-reaching. When we treat ourselves with respect, compassion, and understanding, we create energy that naturally extends to the world around us. Our relationships, interactions, and contributions are informed by a stable, nurturing foundation that encourages patience, empathy, and constructive engagement. Self-love strengthens emotional resilience, inspires authenticity, and fosters generosity, creating waves of positive influence that touch the lives of those we encounter. By cultivating self-love, we are not withdrawing into isolation. We are empowering ourselves to love more deeply, respond more thoughtfully, and connect more meaningfully. Discovering self-love is a radical act of courage. It requires mindfulness, intentionality, and a willingness to confront discomfort, self-doubt, and vulnerability. It demands that we embrace imperfection, forgive ourselves, and nurture our own growth. Yet, in doing so, we unlock a capacity for compassion that cannot be forced or borrowed from external sources. True empathy flows from a heart that is whole within, and the love we cultivate for ourselves becomes the source of the care we offer the world. By embracing self-love, we create a life rooted in authenticity, resilience, and generosity, and we contribute to a world where compassion is not fleeting or conditional, but enduring, powerful, and transformative. Self-acceptance is the cornerstone of a fulfilling and balanced life, a quiet yet profound recognition that who we are in this very moment is worthy of acknowledgement and respect. It is not merely a passive feeling of contentment, nor is it an avoidance of self-improvement. Rather, it is an active, conscious embrace of both our strengths and our weaknesses, our successes and our failures, and the multitude of experiences that have shaped us. In a world that constantly measures us against external standards, achievements, and comparisons, self-acceptance becomes a radical act of courage. It challenges the societal narrative that our worth must be earned or that perfection is attainable. By accepting ourselves as we are, we free ourselves from the exhausting and endless pursuit of validation from others, and we create a stable foundation from which genuine growth and compassion can emerge. At its core, self-acceptance begins with awareness. To accept oneself, one must first know oneself, not superficially, but deeply and with honesty that is devoid of judgment. This involves examining our thoughts, emotions, habits, and patterns without immediately labeling them as good or bad. It requires a willingness to sit with discomfort, to notice the insecurities and fears that arise, and to acknowledge them as part of the human experience, rather than as flaws to be hidden or eradicated. This awareness allows us to see ourselves clearly, and clarity is the first step toward true acceptance. It is only when we see ourselves without distortion, without the lens of comparison or societal expectation, that we can begin to offer ourselves the kindness and understanding that we so freely extend to others. Self-acceptance is deeply intertwined with self-compassion, the act of treating ourselves with the same care and empathy that we would offer a close friend. When we stumble, when we make mistakes, or when we fall short of our own expectations, self-acceptance allows us to respond with gentleness rather than harsh criticism. It encourages us to recognize that imperfection is not a deficiency, but an inherent part of being human. Every moment of struggle or failure becomes an opportunity for growth, not a condemnation of our worth. By cultivating self-compassion alongside self-acceptance, we shift from a mindset of punishment and self-reproach to one of understanding and learning. And this shift is transformative in both personal and relational dimensions of life. Furthermore, self-acceptance requires embracing the totality of our experiences, including the parts of ourselves we might prefer to hide. Many of us carry shame about aspects of our identity, past choices, or perceived inadequacies, and this shame can create invisible barriers to emotional well-being. By accepting these parts of ourselves, we integrate our history into our present in a way that is honest and whole. We no longer deny our experiences or attempt to rewrite them. Instead, we acknowledge their impact and allow them to inform our growth. This integration fosters resilience because it enables us to navigate life's challenges from a place of wholeness rather than fragmentation, and it allows us to engage with the world authentically rather than through the lens of pretense or fear of judgment. The practice of self-acceptance also transforms our relationship with change. Often, we associate self-improvement with dissatisfaction or inadequacy, believing that to strive for better we must first reject who we are. Self-acceptance reframes this narrative. It allows us to pursue growth and transformation not from a place of self-loathing, but from a place of self-respect. When we accept ourselves, we recognize that improvement is not about proving our worth, but about honoring our potential. It encourages us to set goals and take action without attaching our identity to the outcomes, fostering a sense of freedom and balance in our personal development. Growth becomes an expression of love and curiosity rather than a measure of our failure to meet an ideal. Another important aspect of self-acceptance is its impact on our relationships with others. When we accept ourselves fully, we are less likely to seek validation externally or to measure our value through the opinions of others. This reduces the tendency to compare ourselves with those around us or to base our self-esteem on approval or recognition. As a result, our interactions become more authentic and less burdened by insecurity or fear. We can listen, empathize, and connect without projecting unresolved self-judgments onto others, and we can also extend patience and compassion to those who struggle, understanding that imperfection is a shared human experience. Self-acceptance nurtures emotional intelligence by fostering clarity about our own needs, boundaries, and values, which in turn allows us to navigate interpersonal dynamics with greater honesty and integrity. Practicing self-acceptance is not always easy, especially in a culture that emphasizes achievement, appearance, and external validation. It requires intentionality and persistence, beginning with small acts of acknowledgement and affirmation. Simple practices such as noticing and celebrating daily efforts, reframing self-critical thoughts, or engaging in reflective journaling can gradually strengthen our capacity to accept ourselves. Over time, these practices shift our internal dialogue from one of critique and resistance to one of understanding and encouragement. We begin to recognize our inherent worth independent of performance or approval, and we cultivate a sense of inner stability that is not easily shaken by external circumstances. Self-acceptance also allows us to embrace uncertainty and impermanence in life. By accepting ourselves in the present moment, we become less dependent on the need for certainty, control, or external validation. We learn to flow with change, to face challenges with confidence, and to navigate setbacks with resilience. We become more comfortable with our evolving selves, understanding that identity is not static but a dynamic interplay of experiences, choices, and reflections. This perspective fosters patience, humility, and openness, enabling us to respond to life's complexities with grace and balance. Ultimately, self-acceptance is a continuous journey rather than a destination. It is a practice of returning to ourselves with openness and kindness, recognizing that our value is intrinsic and unwavering, regardless of external achievements, opinions, or comparisons. It encourages a mindset of curiosity and exploration, inviting us to witness the fullness of our humanity, the joy, the sorrow, the triumphs, and the struggles, without judgment or rejection. It transforms the way we relate to ourselves and others, providing a stable foundation from which compassion, empathy, and authentic connection can emerge naturally, and it serves as the anchor that allows us to navigate life with integrity, courage, and wholeheartedness. The conversations we have with ourselves, often silent and unnoticed, wield a power far greater than most of us realize. Inner dialogue, the continuous stream of thoughts, reflections, judgments, and affirmations that flow through our minds, plays a defining role in shaping not only our perception of reality, but also our emotional well-being, behavior, and interactions with others. While external circumstances certainly influence our experiences, it is the lens of our inner dialogue that ultimately determines how we interpret and respond to life. Our thoughts act as architects of our reality, constructing frameworks of belief that either empower or limit us, elevate or diminish us, and connect or isolate us from the world around us. From the moment we awaken to the instant we fall asleep, our inner dialogue is in motion, framing every experience, decision, and memory. When we approach life with critical, negative, or self-deprecating thoughts, our perception of reality becomes filtered through doubt, fear, and insecurity. Simple challenges feel overwhelming, successes are downplayed or dismissed, and interactions with others are tinged with suspicion or defensiveness. On the other hand, when our internal conversations are infused with encouragement, curiosity, and kindness, even ordinary moments are imbued with possibility and resilience. The words we silently repeat to ourselves act as a lens, coloring the way we perceive opportunities, interpret intentions, and navigate setbacks. It is within this inner landscape that the seeds of our reality are sown, And the quality of these thoughts directly influences the quality of our lives. Inner dialogue is not just a passive reflection of our experiences, it actively shapes them. Consider the way we interpret feedback, criticism, or praise. A person with a harsh, self-critical internal voice may perceive constructive suggestions as personal attacks, triggering anxiety, defensiveness, or withdrawal. Conversely, someone with a supportive inner dialogue interprets the same feedback as guidance, an opportunity for learning, and a chance to grow. This demonstrates that our mental narrative is not simply a mirror of reality, but a filter that interprets, amplifies, or diminishes the events around us. Our inner dialogue is the stage on which our perceptions and experiences are projected, and by shaping it, we have the power to alter the meaning we assign to life itself. The impact of inner dialogue extends deeply into our emotional landscape. Emotions are rarely spontaneous or isolated. They are closely intertwined with the thoughts that precede and accompany them. Negative self-talk fuels anxiety, sadness, and frustration, creating patterns of reaction that reinforce a cycle of emotional distress. Positive, constructive self-talk, on the other hand, can cultivate resilience, contentment, and a sense of agency. By consciously monitoring and guiding our inner dialogue, we can influence the intensity, duration, and quality of our emotional responses. This is not a denial of reality or an attempt to ignore challenges. It is a deliberate acknowledgement that the mind has the power to shape how experiences are felt, interpreted, and integrated into our lives. The formation of beliefs is one of the most profound ways inner dialogue shapes reality. Repeated thoughts create mental patterns that solidify into beliefs about ourselves, others, and the world. For example, consistently thinking, "I am not good enough," fosters a belief system that limits confidence, hinders ambition, and colors interactions with others through fear of rejection or failure. Conversely, nurturing thoughts such as, "I am capable of growth," or "I can learn from my mistakes," gradually build a foundation of self-efficacy and optimism. Over time, these beliefs influence decision-making, relationships, and life trajectories, demonstrating that reality is often less about the events themselves and more about the narratives we construct around them. The language we use internally, even if subtle and subconscious, serves as a blueprint for how we live, act, and respond to challenges. Inner dialogue also governs our relationship with uncertainty and change. Life is inherently unpredictable, and the capacity to navigate uncertainty is heavily influenced by the stories we tell ourselves. A mind dominated by worry, fear, or self-doubt amplifies threats, magnifies risks, and restricts potential, leading to avoidance and stagnation. In contrast, an inner voice that encourages curiosity, adaptability, and problem-solving allows us to approach uncertainty as a space for exploration and learning. This demonstrates that the mental narratives we cultivate do not simply reflect external circumstances, but actively shape our ability to respond to them, creating a reality that is as much a product of thought as of circumstance. The power of inner dialogue is also evident in relationships. The way we speak to ourselves about others, whether we assume goodwill, project fears, or judge harshly, affects our interactions, empathy, and connection. A mind steeped in suspicion or criticism is likely to project these qualities outward, creating friction and misunderstandings. Conversely, cultivating inner dialogue rooted in understanding, patience, and appreciation enhances the ability to listen, empathize, and respond constructively. In this way, the internal conversations we engage in not only define our individual reality but ripple outward, influencing social dynamics and collective experiences. Moreover, the cultivation of conscious, intentional inner dialogue is a skill that can be practiced and refined. Mindfulness, journaling, affirmations, and reflective meditation are tools that allow us to observe, question, and redirect thought patterns that are unhelpful or destructive. By becoming aware of automatic thoughts, recognizing cognitive biases, and deliberately choosing language that is supportive, we begin to reshape the mental narratives that have long governed our perceptions. This practice does not imply ignoring challenges or pretending life is flawless. Rather, it is an acknowledgement that the mind is a powerful instrument, and by guiding its inner dialogue, we can actively influence how life unfolds, the emotions we experience, and the choices we make. The long-term effects of shaping our inner dialogue are transformative. A mind trained to speak with kindness, curiosity, and encouragement develops resilience, optimism, and self-efficacy. Challenges become opportunities for growth, setbacks become lessons rather than failures, and relationships deepen through empathy and understanding. Our inner dialogue becomes a lens that amplifies potential rather than fear, that highlights possibility rather than limitation, and that creates a reality aligned with our values, intentions, and aspirations. By recognizing and harnessing this profound influence, we reclaim agency over our mental landscape, and in turn, the reality we experience daily. Ultimately, the recognition that inner dialogue shapes reality is a reminder that life is not simply a series of external events over which we have limited control. Rather, the way we interpret, internalize, and respond to these events is largely determined by the conversations we have with ourselves. The quality, tone, and content of our thoughts directly influence emotions, beliefs, decisions, relationships, and personal growth, making inner dialogue a powerful architect of our lived experience. It becomes evident that by cultivating mindful, compassionate, and constructive inner conversations, we are not merely changing the way we think, we are actively shaping the reality we inhabit, defining the world we perceive, and creating a life that reflects the mindset we nurture. Healing through compassion for self begins with the recognition that our emotional and psychological wounds are an integral part of being human, and that tending to them is not a sign of weakness, but of courage and wisdom. Many of us have been conditioned to prioritize the needs of others over our own, to push aside pain in order to maintain appearances, or to believe that our suffering is a burden to be hidden. Yet, without acknowledging and nurturing these parts of ourselves, true healing cannot occur. Compassion for self is the practice of approaching our own struggles with patience, understanding, and kindness, rather than judgment or denial. It is the conscious choice to offer ourselves the care we often instinctively extend to those we love, recognizing that our inner life deserves the same attention, empathy, and gentleness as any external relationship. The first step in healing through self-compassion is acknowledging our wounds without minimizing or dismissing them. Emotional pain, past traumas, regrets, or mistakes often leave traces in the form of shame, self-doubt, or anxiety, and these traces can influence our thoughts, behaviors, and relationships long after the events themselves have passed. By confronting these experiences openly, naming our feelings, and recognizing the ways they affect us, we create a space for awareness and understanding. Awareness alone does not heal, but it is the prerequisite for it. To ignore or suppress our pain is to prolong suffering, whereas to face it with compassion is to initiate a process of restoration and transformation. Self-compassion allows us to reframe our internal dialogue in a manner that fosters healing. When we encounter setbacks or moments of self-criticism, the natural tendency might be to amplify blame or internalize feelings of inadequacy. Healing through self-compassion invites us to replace harsh judgments with supportive, nurturing thoughts. Instead of saying, "I shouldn't feel this way," or "I failed again," we learn to say, "It's understandable that I feel this," or "I am learning and growing through this experience." This shift in language is more than semantics. It rewires the way we perceive ourselves, transforming suffering from a source of shame into an opportunity for insight and growth. By treating ourselves as we would a cherished friend who is struggling, we activate emotional pathways that encourage resilience, acceptance, and the capacity to move forward. A key component of self-healing is the willingness to forgive ourselves. Many individuals carry heavy burdens of guilt or regret, believing that acknowledging mistakes equates to weakness or moral failure. Compassion for self teaches that forgiveness is not a denial of accountability, but a recognition of our inherent humanity. Everyone errs, everyone stumbles, and everyone experiences moments of imperfection. By extending forgiveness to ourselves, we release the constriction of self-recrimination and create emotional space for restoration. This forgiveness is not about condoning harmful actions or avoiding responsibility. It is about separating our identity and worth from the transient mistakes we make, and understanding that growth often arises from recognizing and learning from these missteps. Healing through self-compassion also involves honoring our emotional needs and giving ourselves permission to feel fully. Many people have been conditioned to suppress or ignore emotions such as sadness, fear, or vulnerability, seeing them as inconvenient or undesirable. Yet emotions are natural indicators of our internal state, guiding us toward what requires attention, reflection, and care. Compassionate engagement with these feelings allows us to process them constructively, rather than allowing them to manifest in destructive ways such as anger, self-sabotage, or chronic stress. By acknowledging our emotions with curiosity and empathy, we validate our experiences and lay the groundwork for genuine healing. The practice of noticing, naming, and accepting feelings cultivates emotional literacy, self-awareness, and the capacity to navigate life with grace and balance. Physical, mental, and spiritual self-care are complementary aspects of healing through compassion. Our bodies, minds, and souls are interconnected, and attending to one dimension without regard for the others limits the depth of healing we can achieve. Compassion for self may involve prioritizing rest when exhausted, engaging in nourishing activities that replenish energy, setting boundaries that protect well-being, or practicing mindfulness and meditation to center the mind. Each intentional act of care signals to ourselves that we are deserving of attention, nurturance, and protection. This reinforcement strengthens our internal resilience, deepens our sense of self-worth, and cultivates a foundation upon which further emotional healing can occur. Another vital aspect of self-compassion is embracing imperfection and vulnerability. Healing is rarely linear or neat. It often involves setbacks, regressions, and moments of uncertainty. Approaching ourselves with compassion allows us to navigate these fluctuations without despair or self-condemnation. Vulnerability becomes a source of strength rather than a liability, as we learn to engage openly with our pain, acknowledge our limitations, and seek support when needed. By honoring the authentic, unpolished aspects of ourselves, we cultivate a sense of wholeness and integration that is essential for long-term healing. Healing through self-compassion also reshapes our relationship with others. When we learn to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding, we develop a deeper capacity to empathize with the struggles of those around us. The act of caring for our own wounds fosters insight into the universality of suffering and enhances our ability to respond to others with patience and gentleness. Compassion for self is not an isolated practice, but a seed that expands outward, influencing our relationships, interactions, and contributions to the world. By nurturing ourselves, we model emotional literacy, resilience, and kindness, creating an environment where compassion becomes reciprocal rather than conditional. Practicing self-compassion is a continual, intentional effort that may require patience and persistence. Many of us have spent years or decades internalizing critical, punitive messages, and transforming this internal dialogue is not instantaneous. Mindfulness, reflective journaling, affirmations therapy, and meditation are tools that can facilitate this process, allowing us to observe our patterns, challenge unhelpful beliefs, and cultivate supportive thoughts. The act of returning to ourselves with patience, empathy, and encouragement becomes a daily practice, reinforcing the belief that we are deserving of care, healing, and respect. Through consistent engagement with self-compassion, we gradually experience a profound shift in our emotional and psychological landscape. Pain transforms from something to be endured or suppressed into an opportunity to cultivate resilience, self-awareness, and empathy. Emotional scars become markers of growth rather than symbols of shame. Inner dialogue becomes a source of guidance and comfort rather than criticism and fear. As we learn to nurture ourselves through difficulty, the capacity for joy, connection, and meaningful engagement in life naturally expands, illustrating the transformative power of healing through compassion for self. Boundaries are often misunderstood as barriers, limitations, or acts of selfishness, when in reality they are essential expressions of self-respect, self-awareness, and love. To establish boundaries is to acknowledge one's own needs, values, and limits, and to communicate them with clarity and integrity. In a world that frequently celebrates self-sacrifice, people-pleasing, and constant availability, setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable or even guilt-inducing. Yet it is precisely through these acts that we cultivate sustainable relationships, emotional resilience, and genuine compassion. Boundaries are not about shutting others out. They are about defining the space in which we can exist authentically, safely, and fully. while allowing others to do the same. They are acts of love because they honor the wholeness of our being, affirm our worth, and protect our capacity to give generously without depletion. The foundation of establishing boundaries begins with self-awareness. We must first recognize our own needs, limits, and values before we can communicate them effectively. This requires reflection on what drains us, what energizes us, and what aligns with our principles. Many people overlook the subtle ways in which they compromise themselves for the sake of comfort, approval, or avoidance of conflict. Self-awareness allows us to identify patterns of overextension, overcommitment, or emotional depletion, and to understand the consequences of neglecting our own well-being. By becoming attuned to our own rhythms, preferences, and thresholds, we gain the clarity necessary to establish boundaries that protect our mental, emotional, and physical health. Boundaries are intrinsically tied to self-respect. When we respect ourselves enough to say no, to withdraw from toxic or draining situations, or to assert our limits, we communicate to ourselves and others that our needs and well-being matter. This act of self-respect is not narcissistic. It is foundational to living authentically and to nurturing meaningful relationships. Without boundaries, we risk overcommitting, compromising our values, and experiencing resentment, burnout, or emotional exhaustion. By contrast, clearly defined boundaries allow us to interact with the world from a place of abundance, choice, and intentionality rather than obligation or fear of rejection. We affirm that our energy, time, and attention are valuable, and that respecting them is a necessary component of love, both for ourselves and for those we care about. Boundaries are also essential for emotional regulation and psychological safety. When we establish limits on what we will tolerate in interactions with others, we protect ourselves from manipulation, emotional harm, or chronic stress. This is not about creating walls that isolate us, but about defining the conditions in which healthy communication, mutual respect, and understanding can occur. Emotional boundaries allow us to maintain clarity between our feelings and those of others, preventing undue influence or the internalization of other people's anxieties, judgments, or negativity. By consciously defining where our responsibility ends and another's begins, we foster mental and emotional balance, allowing us to respond to challenges thoughtfully rather than react impulsively out of confusion or overwhelm. The process of setting boundaries is inherently an act of self-compassion. It is a way of acknowledging that we deserve care, space, and respect, and that our well-being is not secondary to the demands or expectations of others. Self-compassion recognizes that overextension or neglect of our needs leads to suffering, and that by honoring our limits, we prevent harm and cultivate stability. When we approach boundary setting from a place of love rather than fear or defensiveness, we shift the narrative from protecting myself from others to nurturing myself so I can engage meaningfully with others. In this sense, boundaries become a form of proactive care, a practice that ensures we can give fully without losing sight of our own needs or compromising our values. Healthy boundaries also foster respect and clarity in relationships. When we communicate our limits with honesty and consistency, we provide others with the opportunity to understand, adjust, and respond appropriately. Boundaries create a framework for mutual respect, reducing ambiguity, misunderstandings, and resentment. They allow relationships to thrive because interactions are no longer based on assumption, obligation, or hidden resentment, but on clear communication and mutual recognition. By modeling healthy boundary setting, we encourage others to examine their own needs and limits, promoting reciprocal care and understanding. Boundaries thus act as a structural foundation for relationships that are sustainable, balanced, and nurturing. Boundaries are not static. They are dynamic and adaptable, evolving as we grow and as circumstances change. Recognizing when to reinforce, adjust, or expand boundaries is part of an ongoing dialogue with ourselves and the world around us. Life presents new challenges, responsibilities, and relationships, each of which requires us to reassess our limits and redefine the space in which we operate. This adaptability ensures that boundaries remain effective and supportive, rather than rigid or punitive, allowing us to navigate complexities with confidence, integrity, and compassion. It is through this ongoing attention that boundaries continue to serve as acts of love, both to ourselves and to those with whom we interact. Boundaries also cultivate empowerment and agency. When we establish limits, we take ownership of our choices, time, and energy, asserting control over our lives in a deliberate and conscious way. This empowerment fosters self-trust, confidence, and a sense of personal sovereignty. By knowing that we have the right to define what is acceptable and what is not, we reinforce the understanding that our presence, time, and attention are valuable. This sense of agency is transformative because it allows us to engage with life intentionally rather than reactively, providing the freedom to invest in what truly matters while protecting ourselves from unnecessary harm or distraction. Additionally, boundaries create the conditions for deeper self-discovery and authenticity. By articulating and honoring our needs, preferences, and limits, we learn more about who we are, what we value, and what brings fulfillment. Boundaries are not restrictions on life. They are a map for living intentionally and authentically. They guide us toward experiences, relationships, and activities that resonate with our true selves and away from those that undermine or deplete us. In this way, boundaries are intimately connected to personal growth, emotional intelligence, and spiritual well-being, serving as a compass that aligns our daily actions with our deeper intentions and principles. Boundaries as acts of love also extend to the way we approach challenges and responsibilities. By defining what we can realistically handle, we prevent overcommitment and maintain balance in our lives. This ensures that our energy is directed toward endeavors that align with our values, and that our contributions are meaningful rather than strained or resentful. Boundaries allow us to give intentionally and wholeheartedly, fostering a sense of fulfillment and integrity. They also teach us to accept the limitations of control, understanding that we cannot be everything to everyone, and that honoring our limits is a crucial component of living responsibly and lovingly. Gratitude towards self is a transformative practice that involves recognizing, appreciating, and honoring the effort, resilience, and inherent worth that exist within us. While gratitude is often directed outward, toward people, experiences, or circumstances, turning this practice inward can cultivate a profound sense of self-respect, contentment, and emotional balance. Many individuals overlook their own accomplishments, strengths, and perseverance, focusing instead on perceived shortcomings or failures. This lack of internal acknowledgement can create a sense of insufficiency, dissatisfaction, and disconnection from one's own value. Gratitude towards self counteracts this pattern by encouraging an intentional focus on the positive qualities, efforts, and growth that define our personal journey. It is an act of recognition that celebrates the daily, often unseen ways we navigate life, care for others, and strive toward our goals, while also honoring the essence of who we are beyond achievements or outcomes. At the heart of self-gratitude lies awareness, the ability to notice and reflect on our actions, choices, and qualities. Many moments of effort and courage pass unnoticed simply because we are accustomed to measuring our worth only by significant accomplishments or external validation. By cultivating mindfulness and attention to the ordinary, yet meaningful, acts we perform, we nurture an appreciation for our own perseverance and resilience. This may include acknowledging the times we chose patience over frustration, kindness over judgment, or understanding over reaction. Each of these small, conscious acts contributes to our growth and shapes the quality of our relationships and experiences. By practicing gratitude toward these moments, we honor our capacity to navigate life with intentionality, and we create an internal environment that supports further growth, self-confidence, and emotional stability. Gratitude towards self also strengthens self-compassion. Often, individuals struggle with perfectionism or self-criticism, fixating on what they perceive as failures or inadequacies, rather than recognizing progress and effort. By intentionally focusing on what we have accomplished, the lessons we have learned, and the qualities that allow us to persevere, we replace the voice of judgment with one of encouragement and support. This does not imply ignoring areas for growth or improvement, but rather balancing critique with recognition, creating a more nuanced and compassionate relationship with oneself. When we celebrate our own effort and resilience, we foster emotional well-being and reduce the tendency towards self-reproach, anxiety, or guilt, which often undermines personal motivation and fulfillment. Another important aspect of gratitude towards self is the acknowledgement of personal growth and resilience in the face of adversity. Life presents challenges, setbacks, and disappointments that test our strength and determination. Yet, even in the midst of struggle, there are often moments of courage, learning, and adaptation that deserve recognition. By consciously appreciating the ways we have persevered, coped, or found creative solutions, we honor our capacity to overcome difficulty and embrace change. This practice transforms our relationship with hardship, shifting our focus from what we lacked or failed to achieve to the resources, strengths, and insights we demonstrated along the way. Gratitude towards self in this context reinforces resilience and nurtures a sense of agency, reminding us that our efforts, regardless of the outcome, are meaningful and worthy of acknowledgement. Gratitude towards self is also deeply connected to self-worth. Many people tie their sense of value to external measures such as accomplishments, recognition, or comparison with others. This externalized valuation can be precarious, leaving individuals vulnerable to self-doubt and dissatisfaction. By turning gratitude inward, we cultivate an appreciation for our intrinsic value, the qualities, experiences, and efforts that define who we are independent of external validation. This internalized recognition strengthens confidence, nurtures self-respect, and fosters a sense of completeness that is less dependent on fluctuating circumstances or opinions. When we consistently acknowledge and honor our inherent worth, we create a stable foundation for personal growth, healthy relationships, and emotional equilibrium. Practicing gratitude towards self also enhances motivation and engagement in life. Acknowledging and celebrating small successes, progress, and personal qualities fosters positive reinforcement, encouraging continued effort and persistence. This approach reframes the way we perceive challenges and setbacks, emphasizing growth and learning over failure and inadequacy. By focusing on what we have accomplished, the qualities we embody, and the progress we have made, we cultivate a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. This perspective allows us to approach goals and experiences with optimism, confidence, and a sense of possibility, reinforcing our capacity to pursue meaningful aspirations while maintaining emotional well-being. Gratitude towards self also promotes emotional balance and mental health. When individuals consistently focus on what is lacking, they amplify feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, or dissatisfaction. By contrast, acknowledging and appreciating personal strengths, efforts, and accomplishments creates a more positive internal environment, reducing stress and enhancing resilience. This does not mean ignoring challenges or difficulties, but rather integrating recognition of effort and growth into our understanding of self. By doing so, we cultivate a more balanced perspective that honors both our humanity and our capacity for achievement, fostering a sense of inner stability that supports well-being across multiple areas of life. The practice of gratitude towards self is inherently relational as well. By valuing and honoring our own efforts, qualities, and experiences, we model a standard of respect, empathy, and care that naturally extends to others. When we approach ourselves with appreciation and kindness, we are more likely to approach others with similar generosity, understanding, and patience. This reciprocity enhances the quality of relationships, deepens connections, and encourages an environment of mutual respect and compassion. By practicing gratitude towards self, we create the conditions for healthier interpersonal dynamics, reinforcing the understanding that acknowledging our own value is complementary to recognizing the worth of others. Cultivating gratitude towards self can be practiced through intentional reflection, journaling, affirmations, or mindfulness. These practices create opportunities to pause, observe, and acknowledge the ongoing efforts, progress, and strengths that define our lives. Journaling allows us to track growth over time, identify patterns of resilience, and document moments of courage and creativity. Affirmations reinforce positive recognition of our qualities, while mindfulness invites present moment awareness of our actions, decisions, and experiences. Each of these practices fosters a habit of noticing and appreciating ourselves, shifting our internal dialogue from one of critique and scarcity to one of acknowledgement and abundance, and gradually transforming the way we perceive our own worth, efforts, and capacity for growth. Through consistent practice, gratitude towards self becomes a lens through which we view our lives, our actions, and our experiences. It nurtures emotional resilience, enhances self-worth, reinforces personal growth, and fosters a deeper sense of connection with both ourselves and the world around us. By recognizing and honoring the effort, perseverance, and inherent value within us, we cultivate a mindset that supports well-being, compassion, and fulfillment, creating a foundation for living authentically and meaningfully. Self-love is often misunderstood as indulgence, egoism, or vanity, but in its truest form, it is a profound recognition of one's worth, a nurturing of one's well-being, and a commitment to living authentically. When cultivated intentionally, self-love does not remain confined to the individual. It radiates outward, influencing relationships, communities, and even broader social environments in ways that are subtle yet profound. This ripple effect of self-love demonstrates that caring deeply for oneself is not a selfish act, but a transformative practice that enables empathy, compassion, and connection with others. By fostering a secure and nurturing relationship with ourselves, we create a foundation from which love, understanding, and positive influence naturally flow, touching the lives of those around us and contributing to a more harmonious and compassionate world. The first manifestation of the ripple effect occurs in our relationships. When we love and respect ourselves, we set a standard for how we expect to be treated and communicate our needs and boundaries with clarity and confidence. Self-love allows us to engage with others from a place of wholeness rather than deficiency, reducing dependency on external validation or approval. This shift transforms the dynamics of relationships as interactions become rooted in mutual respect, authenticity, and empathy rather than fear, insecurity, or control. People are naturally drawn to the energy of self-assuredness, kindness, and presence that emerges from self-love, and this energy influences the way they relate to us and to others. The way we treat ourselves sets a template for the kind of care and understanding we extend outward, creating a cycle in which respect and compassion become reciprocated and normalized. Self-love also enhances our capacity for empathy. When we acknowledge and accept our own emotions, needs, and imperfections, we gain a deeper understanding of the struggles, desires, and vulnerabilities that define human experience. By practicing compassion toward ourselves, we cultivate the sensitivity and patience necessary to respond thoughtfully to the challenges of others. The ripple effect occurs as this internal compassion manifests externally in our interactions, enabling us to listen without judgment, offer support without expectation, and provide understanding without overextension. Self-love teaches us that just as we deserve care, kindness, and patience, so too do others, and this realization shapes the quality and depth of our connections. Another aspect of the ripple effect is the influence self-love has on our decision-making and behavior. When we prioritize our own well-being and honor our values, we are less likely to engage in destructive or harmful patterns, whether toward ourselves or others. Choices guided by self-respect and self-awareness foster environments of stability, trust, and integrity, which in turn impact the people and situations we engage with. Self-love encourages mindful action, intentional communication, and ethical decision-making, demonstrating that our internal sense of worth directly influences the external world. The energy of self-respect and care radiates outward, shaping environments and interactions in ways that promote mutual benefit and positive outcomes. The ripple effect of self-love also extends to modeling behavior and inspiring others. When individuals demonstrate self-care, authenticity, and confidence, they provide a tangible example for those around them. Friends, family, colleagues, and even strangers observe the way someone treats themselves and are subtly influenced by it, learning that self-respect and personal well-being are not only acceptable but essential. This modeling creates a culture of care and compassion that extends beyond the individual, encouraging a broader recognition of the importance of self-love as a prerequisite for healthy, sustainable relationships and communities. The way we nurture ourselves becomes an invitation for others to examine their own relationship with self and to cultivate similar practices that enhance their well-being and the well-being of those around them. Self-love also strengthens emotional resilience, which amplifies the ripple effect. When we maintain a stable, compassionate, and nurturing relationship with ourselves, we are better equipped to navigate stress, conflict, and adversity. This resilience manifests externally in the form of calm, patience, and constructive engagement in challenging situations. By responding to difficulties with equanimity and clarity, we influence the emotional atmosphere of our surroundings, reducing tension, fostering cooperation, and modeling adaptive coping strategies. The energy generated by self-love thus has a stabilizing effect on social environments, creating ripples of calm and understanding that extend far beyond our immediate experiences. Furthermore, self-love promotes generosity and authentic contribution. When we feel secure in our own worth and fulfillment, we are more capable of offering time, energy, and resources to others without expectation or depletion. Acts of kindness, support, and guidance emerge from a place of abundance rather than scarcity, ensuring that our contributions are sustainable and impactful. The ripple effect occurs as the energy of authentic care spreads from us to others, inspiring reciprocal action, fostering trust, and creating networks of mutual support. Self-love thus transforms the way we engage with the world, allowing us to give fully without sacrificing our own well-being and to influence our surroundings in ways that are constructive, compassionate, and far-reaching. The ripple effect also influences the collective mindset and cultural norms within communities. When self-love is normalized and practiced consistently, it challenges pervasive patterns of self-criticism, comparison, and inadequacy. Individuals who embody self-respect, authenticity, and compassion contribute to cultural narratives that value well-being, emotional literacy, and human dignity. This influence extends to social interactions, workplace environments, educational settings, and community networks, gradually shaping expectations, behaviors, and values. The practice of self-love becomes a seed from which broader social awareness and empathetic engagement grow, demonstrating that internal transformation has the power to catalyze external change. Self-love fosters creativity, innovation, and purpose as well. When individuals feel valued, respected, and nurtured, they are more willing to explore their talents, take risks, and pursue meaningful endeavors. This sense of security allows for the expression of ideas, perspectives, and contributions that might otherwise be stifled by self-doubt or fear of judgment. The ripple effect emerges as these creative and purposeful actions influence others, inspiring collaboration, innovation, and positive change. By nurturing our own potential, we inadvertently enhance the potential of those around us, creating cycles of growth, inspiration, and contribution that extend far beyond our immediate sphere of influence. Ultimately, the ripple effect of self-love illustrates the interconnectedness of inner well-being and external impact. Loving ourselves equips us with the tools, perspective, and emotional resources necessary to engage authentically, empathetically, and responsibly with the world. The energy generated by self-love touches relationships, communities, and collective consciousness, demonstrating that personal care is not isolated, but inherently relational. By cultivating self-love, we generate waves of influence that enhance understanding, compassion, and resilience in ways that reach far beyond our individual experience, shaping the world in subtle but profound ways.